Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be going over the all-new 2022 Honda Civic Hatchback that was just released by Honda yesterday. I'm super excited for this. First and foremost, we're going to go over the specs of the new Civic Hatchback, and then we're going to get into why this new hatchback is so important, and then finally we're going to cap things off with whether or not you should look into purchasing the new Civic Hatchback. With all that being said, let's get straight into the video. Now let's get into this new hatchback Civic. So first off, let's talk about the styling. So on the front end, it is pretty much the same compared to the sedan, which makes sense. That's what happens when a manufacturer releases a hatchback variant on the cars. They pretty much just make it look like the sedan on the front end side of things. Now the back end looks substantially different. I actually like the styling. The one thing that's interesting is the 2022 hatchback Civic looks very similar to the 2021 sedan Civic from a rear end perspective. Like it's kind of weird, but it definitely has a very similar look to it as the sedan, which is, I don't know, just interesting. But obviously this isn't nearly as crazy and shouty as the previous generation hatchback with its two spoilers and the fake venting and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that looks pretty cool though is the exhaust tip setup. Right, with the previous Civic it was in the center, this is on either side, so it kind of has a little bit of a different layout as what I'm noticing with the pictures. And then with the taillights, I definitely like the look of those taillights. I think they look really good. And then the sloped window, obviously that makes sense because it's a hatchback. It looks pretty cool. Just overall design-wise, I think it looks pretty good. Again, it's a little bit more on the subdued side of things, which is kind of what Honda's going for, right? They're trying to make a more mature-looking car. Now, exterior aesthetics aside, they are making some other tweaks to the car from a performance standpoint, so they're going to give it a little bit more aggressive tires, so it should be sportier from that standpoint. And then apparently they're also going to slightly tweak the suspension with the car, and then it is on a stiffer chassis compared to the sedan, so it should just drive sportier, which you guys know one of my complaints about the new sedan was the fact that it really didn't feel sporty, and so then this actually will hopefully give the Civic kind of a sportier feel. Now, aside from that, if you guys are wondering on storage space, this is actually going to be smaller than the previous generation, which is a little bit sad, but it's still bigger than the other hatchbacks in the segment, so it's not a huge deal, but apparently will be smaller, but it's almost about the same size from a storage space perspective. Aside from that, the most exciting news is the new hatchback will come with a manual transmission, but even more exciting than that, you will be able to get the manual transmission with the turbocharged engine, which is a huge win in my opinion. And the reason being is that 2 liter is okay, but the 1.5 liter is definitely the route to go, and the fact that you can get it with a manual is just absolutely awesome. That is going to be the car to go for, is a hatchback with the manual and the 1.5 liter. Now, if you guys are wondering in terms of the other transmission they're offering, it's the same CVT as what you get in the sedan, so that's not changing. It's just that we actually get to have a manual transmission. Now, aside from that, there are going to be a few different packages offered here with the hatchback. So you've got the LX and the Sport model, and then you have the EXL and the Sport Touring. So very similar to what they did with the previous generation hatchback. And again, you can get those two different engines, either the 2 liter or the 1.5 liter. And you guys know I'm all about the 1.5 liter, so I'd get the higher up packages with that engine because, well, it just drives great. And then aside from that, the rest of the interior is really not going to change. So the front cockpit area is going to be identical to the sedan. The rear seating area obviously will be a little bit different because of the hatchback configuration, but for the most part the interior is pretty much going to feel the same. Again, the biggest changes is the rear styling. They're going to make small tweaks with the suspension, different tires, different chassis, and then again 3-pedal layout. And it'll be interesting to see if they add the auto rev match to the manual transmission that you have in the Civic Type R. I mean, we'll see what happens, but those are pretty much the basic specs on the new hatchback Civic. Let's get into why this new Civic hatchback is so important. So first off, they're offering a manual transmission, right? It's going to give enthusiasts an option to go for, and it seems like more and more people are wanting manual transmissions, which I am all about. And so it's cool that Honda's offering a manual transmission, and it's even cooler that they're offering the manual transmission with the more premium engine options so that we can actually have an enthusiast Civic on the entry-level side of things until we get the SI and then the Type R. Aside from that, the other thing that's important is just this really shows the route that Honda's going with their cars. They're going for kind of the more luxury look, the more subdued look. It seems like they're really pushing that route. So If you guys remember, several years ago, Mazda kind of did a similar thing where they brought up their interior materials quite a bit, and then they changed their exterior styling to look a little bit more like a luxury car. It seems like Honda's now doing that same thing to start competing against Mazda on that front, so it's pretty interesting that that is the route that they're going. Now, the other thing that's really important about this hatchback is, again, with the small changes they're doing to the suspension, the fact that this is more rigid, and then also with the tires, again, it's going to be a sporty Civic for enthusiasts. So if you are a car enthusiast, the hatchback is going to be the route to go. If you're just looking for a daily driver, then the sedan is going to be the route to go. It's going to be softer. It's not going to be as exciting to drive, but again, it's going to be kind of better for just daily driver use. Now, the most exciting thing is this could be the hint to the Civic, well, not could be, this is rather the hint to the Civic Type R, and then also the SI as well in terms of what the styling looks like. So we've obviously seen renders up to this point in terms of what the new Civic SI and what the new Type R are going to look like, but this really kind of cements what that rear end is going to look like. Now, obviously, we don't know what the spoiler is going to look like on the back end, or how they're going to do the exhaust tip setup, or the diffuser, or the bumper, all that kind of stuff, what kind of venting it's going to have, or lack of venting, right? We don't know at this point. But we can at least see what the hatchback's going to look like, and we know that on the Type R for sure, they're going to build that off of the hatchback variant, especially since they're already making this car stiffer from a chassis perspective. It makes sense that they're going to use that for the Civic Type R, and that's just what the Civic Type R has always been. It's always been a hatchback. And so I think that this is really important for us to see this, and it's giving us an idea of what it's going to look like, so then it can help us as buyers to determine if we are going to want to go for the new Type R from a stylistic perspective, or if we're going to want to stick with the previous one. And here's what I'd have to say is, it looks, based on this styling, it looks like the new Type R is probably going to be quite a bit more subdued, right? It's going to have a more mature look. And so if you want that crazy, flashy, shouty, kind of like boy racer type Civic, then the current generation Civic Type R, right, the 2021, you're going to want to go for one of those, because this new one, it looks like it's just not going to look nearly as crazy. Now let's finish things off by going over whether or not you should look into buying this new Civic hatchback. First off, again, my recommendation is to get the manual transmission with the 1.5 liter. I've driven both engines. The 2 liter does okay, but the 1.5 liter, it has the right power, it has the right torque. And again, I say this in all of my videos, but being in elevation, it is definitely worth it with getting a turbocharged engine, just because you don't get nearly as much power loss. But in terms of the car as a whole, if you're looking for a more fun and sporty driving experience, then it will be worth it for you to wait for the hatchback. But if you're just getting the Civic because you want an A to B type car and you want something that's reliable and gets good gas mileage, I would just go for the sedan. The sedan's going to start at a little bit of a lower price, so you're going to save some money from that perspective. And you know, they'll both get about the same amount in fuel economy and all that, so that's not really all that important. But the biggest thing is it'll cost a little bit less, and it's going to be smoother with the suspension. Tires are going to be a little bit less expensive, right? Because the sportier tires are going to put on the hatchback are going to be a little bit more in terms of running costs and all that. And so if you're looking for, again, commuter car, I would stick with the sedan. If you're looking for a more fun, engaging, sporty driving experience, then I would definitely wait for the hatchback, and yeah, then it would definitely be worth buying the hatchback. And yeah, that's pretty much, again, why this car is important, and then my thoughts on whether or not you should buy the new Civic hatchback. Now, that's going to sum things up for our video on the new 2022 Honda Civic hatchback. I want you guys to let me know what your thoughts are on the new hatchback in the comment section down below. As always, if you're stopping for the first time, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe. And then if you do feel like my videos are of value to you, I'd really appreciate your support over on Patreon. I'm going to include a link to that in the description down below. I'll see all of you guys in the next video.